Hey, merriment makers. Welcome back to another episode of the Merriment Making Podcast. I'm Mary England, and we are here to turn your joy into a daily practice and stop treating happiness like it's some sort of accident. Before we get into this, I want to let you know that on Sunday, March 23rd, I am hosting a free live seminar called Refresh and Recenter. We are building habits for a joyful spring. So if you are feeling like you're running on autopilot, you're stuck in a rut, needing a reset, coming out of winter, we are going to be clearing mental clutter, refreshing your routines, and giving you simple tools to create more balance and happiness. I'm even going to be doing an EFT tapping session and laughter yoga exercises to help you shift your energy in real time. 97% of my live participants that report at the beginning and at the end have a positive upward swing in their mood and a negative downward swing in their anxiety. It is an amazing experience to come to one of my live events. So did I also mention it's free? It's totally free. And you can sign up now at uncustomary.org/refresh, REFRESH. I would love to see you there. And let's get into today's episode, which is about your psychological or happiness immune system. Okay, so what is a psychological immune system? Well, it's something that might just change the way you think about your own happiness. So you know how your body has an immune system that fights off germs and infections? Well, it turns out that your mind has one of those too. Your psychological immune system is what helps you bounce back from disappointment, adversity. It helps shift your perspective and find lessons. It helps you adapt really to whatever life throws at you. We tend to assume that happiness is just something that happens. Like if the right things line up, if we get the right job, meet the right person, or finally move to that cute little house with a porch swing, then we'll be happy. And it is true that biologically we do have a little bit of a set baseline for what our hedonic treadmill adaptation of baseline happiness is, and that our circumstances absolutely do affect us. However, we are in control of how much we can manipulate those things. And the truth is also that your happiness is way less about what happens to you and way more about how you process it. Psychologists Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson have done extensive research on this, and they've found that really when people go through difficult experiences, whether it's losing a job, breaking up, missing out on an opportunity that they really wanted and they regret, they assume that they're really going to be devastated for a lot longer than they think they're going to be. But our brains are sneaky. They problem solve for us, and we have these built-in mechanisms that help us to adjust and rationalize and reframe situations to protect our well-being. It's like our mind is saying, all right, well, that sucked, but here's why it's actually okay. The silver sparkly lining. And that shift is your psychological happiness immune system at work. Think back to a time when something didn't go your way. Maybe you were, convinced that it was going to ruin everything. Everything sucked. Your life was over. You hate everything. Everything was ruined. But then time went on. Life went on. Maybe things even turned out for the better. And you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't get that thing that I thought that I wanted. Can you remember a time like that? I can. If you're listening right now, you can say it out loud or just acknowledge it in your head. The good news is that you can strengthen your psychological immune system. If you're thinking, okay, that's great that that's technically a thing, but I don't think I have that built into me. This whole idea of my body telling me, oh, that's great, that sucked, but here's why it's actually okay. That seems like something other people do that they have in them that's not really in me. That's okay. I definitely think that some people have it in them a little stronger as a baseline, but it's also something that you can build. Everything is a skill to build. We just need practice with it. So you don't have to just settle for your default way of coping. I'm going to say that again. You do not have to settle for your default way of coping. Just like you wouldn't want a weak physical immune system, you don't want a weak psychological one either. So let's talk about some ways to boost your resilience, to boost your emotional, psychological, happy immunity. So the first thing is to reframe negative events in real time. Now, I want to disclaim this by saying that there is something called toxic positivity, emotional bypassing. There is a difference between trying to push through something and bypass it to avoid it And there is a way to also shift into what is the potential upside to this, right? So you have to kind of figure out who you are, what is your baseline, what is your personality, and what is the most comfortable thing for you. Usually, the most comfortable thing for you is not the best thing for you. This week on Merriment Mondays live on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, I talked about how saying just think positive is not always the best thing. So if you're somebody who likes to push emotions to the side, if you're someone who likes to keep your schedule super busy so that you're not processing your feelings, if you like to stay in that like quote masculine energy and you like to always look for the solution instead of feeling the problem out, that might be a sign that you are always reframing negative events instead of processing your emotions. So I do want to just talk about that a little bit. And if you need some resources on that, go check out the episode on Merriment Mondays. That being said, I think it is an extremely helpful skill to be able to reframe negative events. I think most people in my life that I encounter anyway tend to sway towards the side of dwelling and wallowing in their emotions instead of looking towards the next solution, looking towards the next thing they can try to do, and feeling stuck instead of attempting to reframe. So, if this is what you need, let's continue. Number 1, reframing negative events in real time. So instead of getting stuck in, is this the worst thing ever, and feeling paralyzed and overwhelmed, ask yourself these kinds of questions. What is the potential upside to this? What will this teach me in 5 years? What story can I tell about this later? I believe the closer you can ask those questions to the actual event, the happier you can be. So I'm at the point where it might not be happening exactly in the moment, but at least an hour later or that night, I'm thinking about how this is going to be a great story. In the past week, I've had my wallet stolen, and literally later that night, I was laughing and saying how this is such a silly story. I am going to be telling the story for years. So yeah, it was awful. It was invasive and bad. And in the moment, I was crying. But later that night, I started thinking about the details of how crazy the story was, and I was laughing. And I think the closer you can push those two things together, the happier of a person you can be. Sometimes I'm laughing in the moment, like when something weird happens and I'm driving, and someone does something really crazy. I'm like, oh my God, that was so silly. And remembering, like I always tell you, the cosmic joke of life, that we're here on this spinning ball. And like, why is this happening? This is so silly. Allow yourself to zoom out. Allow yourself to zoom out and think about how you could tell this story later. Number 2, reduce your decision overload. Studies show that people who are constantly second-guessing their decisions, their choices, they are less happy. And it's because they're always wondering if they've made the right decision. So the next time you make a decision, big, small, just commit to it. Stop looking for better options. Trust yourself and move forward. Your brain will actually work harder to help you feel good about it. That's what the psychological immune system is doing. Doing something like this obviously is easier said than done at the beginning. But like when I'm working with someone, whether it's in their home or online, with their brain, with their home, it doesn't really matter. I will tell them, okay, just choose between these two things. And yeah, I'm kind of telling them to do it quickly, to force them. That's what a coach is doing. But what you've been doing in the past hasn't been working. It's been keeping you stuck. So imagine that I'm there and I'm like, hey, what's happening? Which one is it the thing that you want? Are you using either of these? Which one? Which one? Just pick. And the truth is, again, that we're on a spinning ball and it doesn't really matter. But once you make the decision, there's going to be some reframing that happens automatically, whether it's in your inner monologue, out loud in conversation, or just within the way that you go about your life utilizing that decision. And that looks like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm glad that I did that. I'm glad that I picked that thing. That makes sense. Because you know what? If I would have picked the other thing, this is why it wouldn't have worked out. That's what we do as people. It's very interesting. It's very weird. Number 3, train yourself to expect change. One of the biggest reasons that we're struggling, that we feel stuck, that we feel unhappy, is that we have these expectations that things are always just going to be the same forever. But when you remind yourself that life is temporary and everything inside of life is temporary, it takes the pressure off. Oh my goodness. When you remind yourself that everything that you see has been built and didn't exist before, and everything you know will disintegrate and die and morph and change, it is astounding. It might be a little bit depressing or disappointing or confronting. It might give you a bit of an existential crisis. You might start thinking about how small you are, and you might start thinking about how you are on a rock spinning in outer space. But it is also really relieving. One of the biggest things that I can give to you, one of the biggest gifts, is to take this pressure off. You don't need to make everything a big deal. Every single thing is not life or death. In fact, death is the thing that gives all of this meaning, and every struggle that we have doesn't always affect every single other aspect of the rest of your life. Yes, the butterfly effect, yes, and maybe that's the better choice. Maybe that part of the butterfly effect is going to make you go the better route that you would have wanted. I don't know, but let's start taking action for ourselves instead of staying stuck. Say this out loud. I have survived every difficult moment I have faced. Ever. And I will get through this one too. I have survived every difficult moment I have faced. And I will get through this one too. And that brings me to say that helping you build these habits in a simple, stress-free way. If you like what we're talking about today, then I really do want you to come to the Refresh and Recenter seminar on March 23rd. And if you can't come, still sign up so you can get the replay. We're going to go even deeper into this idea of shifting your state physically, mentally, and creating habits that actually stick without feeling like a chore. Go to uncustomary.org/refresh and sign up now. It's totally free, and I promise that you will leave feeling lighter, clearer, and ready for spring. Even if you're in a different hemisphere, you can have spring in your heart. All right, coming back. Let's do some actual exercises together. The first thing is a psychological reframe game. I want you to think about something frustrating that happened to you this week, or the most close frustrating event that you can imagine. Maybe somebody cut you off in traffic. Maybe you got some annoying feedback at work. Maybe there was an annoying customer. Maybe a family member. I don't know. You got one? I'm sure that was easy. Now take 30 seconds to find 3 alternative ways to look at it. You can look for a funny or lighthearted perspective. Maybe you can find a long-term lesson in it, a reason that this could actually be a good thing, or maybe some empathy. So maybe your friend canceled plans at the last minute of something that you really wanted to do. And instead of being like, ugh, they don't care about me, you could be like, well, I got some time to myself. Maybe they're overwhelmed. I can check in on them. I can use this as a chance to practice my communication skills. This is a way for me to understand that just because someone does something, that it doesn't mean that it's personal. And the more you do this, the faster your brain will start doing it automatically. This is how you train your psychological immune system. Okay, you know what? That is it for today. And here's what I want you to take away. Your happiness is a skill. Your brain is constantly adjusting, and it is your job to help it shift in a positive direction. You are more resilient than you think. And if you want to take this even further, come join me on Sunday, March 23rd, for Refresh and Recenter. We're going to be doing live exercises, EFT tapping, laughter yoga, and learning more about how to reset for spring, even if it's just in your heart, not outside. So go to uncustomary.org/refresh and grab your free spot. Until next time, keep making merriment, and remember, you have to feel good to do good. I'll see you soon.